When looking at organizations such as BCANS, it is important to ask ourselves why nonprofits like this have to exist. My image is meant to portray a bird's-eye view of the impact and realities of colonialism to help us understand the organization BCANS from a greater perspective than just the present, and to expand to the horizon. Through this image, we can shift our gaze towards history and reflect on the actions of the state and their present-day consequences. This photo was taken on top of what is now recognized as Mount Douglas. Prior to the arrival of European settlers, Mount Douglas was recognized as BCANS by indigenous nations. I also want to say that I looked up the proper pronunciation of the original name, and I'm not 100% sure if I am pronouncing it right. So if anyone knows how to say it properly, please let me know. This mountain is in WSÁNEĆ territory and bordered by the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. BCANS serves as an important part of these nations' culture, as it has been and continues to be a meeting place. Colonization is responsible for more than the renaming of Mount Douglas. It is responsible for the high disability rates among Indigenous nations across Canada. Since European contact, Indigenous nations have been suffering intergenerational effects of colonialism. These effects are results of displacement, genocide, and loss of culture. At this time, Canada was carrying out these acts through residential schools, the 60 Scoop, and by not allowing Indigenous nations to act upon cultural practices. Now in present-day Canada, this state violence continues through pathways that are more subtle and through dominant Eurocentric discourse. This violence is translated in our education system, where the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada is typically glossed over and romanticized. Indigenous children still continue to be removed from their homes by the child welfare system, and water advisories continue to exist. These are just a few examples. We are also able to understand this state violence through Mount Douglas. For years, local Indigenous people have been calling for the mountain to go back to its original name. By the government refusing to change the name back, the Indigenous cultural significance of this mountain is not recognized or respected by the state. Not acknowledging the importance of Indigenous landmarks diminishes Indigenous practices and belief systems in present-day society, perpetuating oppressive structures and calling for the need of organizations such as BCANS. It is because of Canada's history and present-day oppression that the Indigenous disability rate in Canada is between 30 to 35%. BCAN's website outlines some of the present-day barriers that allow for this rate to remain so high. Barriers such as limited economic and employment opportunities, accessibility, transportation, and access to resources. With limited resources and high demand, these issues will only continue to increase. Nonprofits like BCANS are willing to recognize and work to mitigate gaps within the system.